¿Está abierto? Sí.
Hello everybody, good afternoon, greetings, it's great to be here with all of you. First of all, I'm really sorry about the technical difficulties that we had last week, but here we are and I'm very grateful that you are joining us today in this webinar. Well, first of all, we would like to acknowledge that we made two big mistakes in the delivery of the materials for secondary. The first one in the 9th grade, where in the idea of having a review of the previous school year, we delivered in the first bimester of English Whiz and English Whiz only the same content of the last year's 5th bimester. Our intention was to create new material for the same exact purpose, but because of an editorial mistake, the content was repeated. Acknowledging this mistake, we have been working very hard to create new content which will be accessible for you digitally starting the middle of next week. Now, our second mistake was changing the materials, getting so carried away with the improvements, and devoting ourselves to doing that we absolutely forgot to let you know. That's a huge mistake on our behalf. We feel terrible because we are working for you, and you should have been the first ones to know. Trust us, we have understood this very clearly. Now, having said so, and because we do believe that UNO is an educational project that is alive, and not only it grows from your feedback and your suggestions, but also according to your needs and the needs of all of its members, a lot of these changes were made. And that is where I will focus the information for this webinar. Please, if you have questions, just write them down, and at the end, we'll answer them in the order that they were received, and accordingly. In the past years, many of you let us know that regardless of the fact that our students finished elementary school with an A2 level, a large amount of the new students joined your schools, making it very difficult for you to differentiate within the classroom, and specifically using a set of fixed materials. This is why we created a new spectrum of content from which you will be able to choose in order to receive the materials which suit your needs the best way, even among groups. Now, in order to do so, it is very important to understand how these materials are arranged. So I will be showing you some material and the tables and the charts that will be the guidelines in order to review these materials. And I'm going to go slow because some of this information might be new to some of us, and it is very important that we all have it very clear. So the first chart that we'll be seeing right now is the level chart. Here is the journey that our students make in order to create their language acquisition throughout English. And it goes from A2 all the way to C1. The way in which each of these levels is assessed by Cambridge University is for A2, our students are certified with CET, B1 they're certified with PET, B2 they're certified with First Certificate, and obviously C1, which we only just have a glance of the beginnings, very beginnings of C1 in the advanced program that is certified by CAI. So that is our first variable, or the first thing we take into consideration. The second one, which is very important, are the programs which conform our whole B project. The first one is the English Whiz program, and this is the one we will be talking about during the rest of the webinar, which is meant to be covered in 2 to 3 hours weekly. The second one is the Global Explorer program, which has a more scientific approach, and it's meant to be covered from 3 to 4 hours weekly. And the Language Artist program, which is a literacy and writing workshop that is meant to be covered from 5 to 6 or 7 hours a week. Now, the combination of these two factors is the one that is going to give us all of the different possibilities in which our new spectrum is conformed. Both the level and the amount of hours in which we teach English in our schools. This is very, very, very important because we've realized that in some of the schools in which difficulties were presented on how to work with the students was because sometimes the program that the school was using was meant to be covered in less hours or more hours, depending on the case. So we'll go to the next chart, and this is where the puzzle begins and the fun begins. From now on, you will be able to choose for the bilingual program or for the bilingual section. You will have two options. The basic option, which is for schools who have 5 to 6 hours of English teaching or English acquisition. And it's conformed by the English Whiz and the Global Explorer, and an intermediate level that goes for schools who have 7 to 9 hours a week. And the bicultural has also the intermediate option and the advanced option, because bicultural also covers schools that go from 10 to 15 hours a week. All these variables depend on the amount of hours you have, the level that your students reached in elementary, the level that your students have when they enter your school, and the level of certification that you are planning to reach at the end of 9th grade. Now, having said so, we're going to see how each of the levels is conformed. Well, here is the example of how you'll have the three possible combinations. You will have the basic component, you will have an intermediate component, and an advanced component. Now, as you can see, what changes is English Whiz. Global Explorer stays pretty much the same, just doing its alignment to the level that we're covering. And obviously something that a lot of you don't know, but is very, very important, is that Global Explorer touches also or makes an accent on that subject that is important for each grade level in secondary. Biology for 7th, physics for 8th, and chemistry for 9th. Now, within the Language Artist section or program, we did modify some of the things that you mentioned and some of the needs that you had last year, and we interchanged some of the long readings, and we're starting this year every bimester with shorter readings in order for the children to get used to the way in which we work, and then we start increasing the amount of reading that they do within the program. But mainly the one that was really touched and was really altered was English Whiz, and as I said at the beginning, English Whiz only. This is very, very important to clarify, because you can be very happy to know that your content is exactly the content that you need, exactly the content that you were expecting, other than that bimester that we mentioned, and that all that was changed was the naming of the content and the naming of the materials. And this is where we're going to try to understand all together right now. So in the next chart, we're going to start with the advanced level. why with the advanced level? Because this is the level that we had last year. You will all recognize and find it very, very familiar, because you'll see that this is how our bimesters pretty much were arranged last year, well, on all of the previous years when we started secondary. And they started from B1 and they went all the way to C1. The naming changes because even though you are receiving the material that is meant to be, for example, in 7th grade, you're receiving for PET, for the first bimester, you're receiving B14, that's the naming that you will receive, but it is because that is the exact level that your students are receiving or were receiving also before. That is what they're getting, and that is the naming that we have. But it doesn't mean that it does not belong to the first bimester of 7th grade in the advanced program. This is how we did it last year, and this was the only option that we had, and we were trying to support you in doing the differentiation and within the classroom, and that's where we understood that it was very, very difficult. So what we decided to do was to open the spectrum and go below in the levels and give you the opportunity to have the whole B1 level and also include A2. So we also have now the intermediate level, the one that you're seeing right now on your screen, and the intermediate level starts at the end of A2 and joins the advanced program because it is linear. So you'll be able to see this in the complete chart. I just wanted to make sure that you knew where it all came from, because we started from the advanced program, then we went downwards because that's what we already had. So now in the intermediate level, we are going from the B28, which is the first one that we had, and the problem that we had this year, we're going from there downwards to A26, which is the first bimester that the 7th grade students will be receiving in this intermediate proposal. And if we lower it down, and if we go to the basic proposal that we have, then it goes even further down, all the way to A21. Now, I'm going to go to the full chart because you're going to be able to see the whole spectrum and how it relates to every single level. Yes, please. Okay, so here it is. And this is the whole spectrum that right now we have available for all of the schools. And this is where, from now on, you will be able to decide which suits the needs of your students. Now, it is very, very important to consider, and this is why it was so hard for us to create, because we really thought about every single part that we included, that you already have students, especially for those schools who are not new, but have been working with us in the secondary levels. It is very, very important to realize that your students that are already in 8th grade and 9th grade have already used their materials. And they already started with B2 level. So that's why it is very, very important that if you want to change, or if you want to order, to ask for a specific change within your materials, that we do it on a one-to-one basis. And we sit down with you and we go over your specific situation within your school, because we cannot, there are certain things that we cannot do because we do not want to affect the students. All of these we're doing on behalf of your students and on behalf of every single school, because we know that every single school has different needs. And what we want to do is that you are able to choose not only from the fixed three proposals that we have here, basic, intermediate, and advanced, but in a short term, what we're trying to achieve is that you as a school and as an English coordinator, as an English director, you can even choose from a specific level. For example, you can say, I want to start my 8th grade in B1-3, or I want to start my 9th grade in B2-5, for example. So this is the flexibility that we're trying to create, or we created for every single school. But it is very important, as I mentioned, that we all see it very clear. I think that the first column is the most important one, the one on the left, because you can see how there's a very defined pathway in which you start from A2, from the very, very first unit, which is A2-1, you cover the whole level, A2, and then it flows B1, and then it flows B2, and all the way to C1. So I think that with this information, we can make very clear decisions and decisions that won't harm our schools or our students, and that would also help us find our specific needs. Remember, it is very important to take into consideration both factors, your level and the amount of hours of English that you are teaching within your school. So hopefully with this information it is more clear to all of you. I know, I acknowledge that it was a shocker when you received the materials and all of a sudden you opened the book and the first page you saw it's page 230 or page 125 and you said there's something wrong, they made a mistake. No, it was made on purpose because it is very important in this journey that we all have a very clear idea of where we're standing, where each school is standing, where each student is standing. For you, it's a great asset because if you show your parents and if you show your teachers and your students where they're at, where you want to go, and the flow that they have among the levels, then it is going to give all of us a very clear understanding of where we want to go. And that way, we won't have any communication problems with ordering our materials, with saying specifically what we need for our schools, and that's our goal. We want to service you better. We're partnering with you. All of these solutions are made always thinking of what is best for you as a school, but above all, what is best for each and every one of your students. So, I don't know if there are questions. Are there any questions that we can answer right now? I think, no?
Not at the moment, we don't have it.
So, either is it too difficult or it was very clear.
Yes,
So,
really
let's be positive and hope for the second one and believe that there was a clear explanation. Tomorrow we will have the same webinar in Spanish. I want to clarify that the reason why we decided to do the one last week in Spanish was because a lot of the calls that we were receiving here were made from administrative staff within the schools, and they were facing some situations with the parents who were, concerned or why the book was starting with page 100 and blah, blah, blah. And we thought that if we did it in Spanish, it was good for the school sakes. But we're very pleased to do it in English, and that's what we did today. And tomorrow we will be doing it in Spanish, and we're happy to clarify any particular doubt that you may have. Please something very, very important. If you want to change, if you need a change, contact us to
comunicación.
Comunicación at UNOi.com. Comunicación@unoi.com. And please, in the subject of your message, just say the secondary webinar. That way we'll know that it's a question or a specific situation regarding this webinar, and we will reach you immediately, and that way we will be able to follow up on any need that you may have. Thank you very much, and I hope you have a beautiful week.